Martha, 58, scowled her phone. Another climate disaster headline. When a stranger plopped a dented thermos in her lap. Bird juice, he winked, gesturing to hummingbirds dive-bombing a market stall's syrup feeders. Seattle's gray skies couldn't dampen this spectacle. She cracked open her field notebook, ink bleeding as rain smudged Anna's hummingbird. Aggressive little divas beside grocery lists. That thermos-toting weirdo? Turned out he ran an urban birdwatching fam creator scowled her phone. Another climate disaster headline. When a flash of movement caught her eye. A sparrow, dusty brown with a defiant streak of yellow, hopped along her rain-slicked windowsill. Its tiny claws left delicate tracks, a fleeting map of presence. She reached for field notebook buried under grocery receipts. Its leather cover cracked from years abandoned in a drawer. Once she'd filled its pages with sketches of backyard birds. Back when her hands didn't stiffen in damp Seattle cold. Farmer's market that weekend. She hesitated by a folding table draped in binoculars and mismatched mugs of peppermint tea. Urban Bird Collective's sign was hand-painted, slightly crooked. A woman in a moth-eaten cardigan waved her over. We're just tallying crows today. No expertise required. Martha's grip tightened on her notebook. What if she'd forgotten how to look? What if world was already too quiet? But crows were everywhere, gossiping on power lines, dunking stale bagels in puddles. Creator scribbled notes, her handwriting wobbling with each sighting. Group moved like a flock itself, laughing as someone tripped over a root. Classic rookie step, someone muttered, and Martha's laugh surprised her. Weeks passed. Her notebook swelled with ink-smudged observations. A Cooper's hawk stalking pigeons by bus stop, juncos nesting in a discarded bike helmet. She learned to spot difference between a starling's iridescence and an oil slick. Grief still lapped her, but now it had edges she could trace, like outline of a feather pressed into wet paper. One drizzly dawn she spotted sparrow again, same yellow streak, perched on her fire escape. Martha didn't reach for her phone. Woman scowled her phone. Another climate disaster headline. When a flash of movement caught her eye. A sparrow, bold as brass, hopped onto her windowsill, cocking its head as if asking why she wasn't outside. She snorted. Even birds were giving her side-eye now. That afternoon, shuffling past Stall's Pike Place Market, she nearly tripped over a folding table manned by a woman in a hat shaped like a blue heron. Urban Birdwatching Collective. No binoculars required. Read sign. She hesitated, but heron hat woman, Lorna, 72, with energy of a caffeinated chickadee, thrust a field notebook into her hands. Track what you see. Even pigeons count. Fam Martha's first entries were tragic. Gray blob, pigeon. Loud crow, angry. But Lorna's crew, a mix of retirees, baristas, and a postal worker who could mimic owl calls, treated her scribbles like sacred texts. They gathered weekly at community garden, swapping stories over bruised apples from farmer's market. Slowly, Martha's notes deepened. She noticed how crows mobbed hawks' dusk, how sparrows timed their baths between rain showers. Her notebook became less a record and more a map of resilience, of small adaptations. One morning, she spotted a fledgling junco stranded on a sidewalk. Pre-collective she might have walked by, heart heavy but hands idle. Now she flagged down a teen from group, who produced a makeshift nest from their backpack like a wildlife wizard. As they relocated Bird, creator realized, tracking wasn't just observing, it was answering back. By summer's end, her notebook's edges were frayed, its pages stained by drizzle and berry juice. Lorna nominated her to lead a neighborhood bird count. Martha balked, until she remembered junco, how its wings had beat against her palms, urgent and alive. She flipped to a fresh page, ready to begin. Woman scowled her phone. Another climate disaster headline. When a flash of movement caught her eye. A sparrow, dusty brown and unremarkable, hopped along her rain-slick balcony railing. For months such tiny moments had slipped past unnoticed, drowned out by doom-scroll static. But this bird cocked its head, eyeing her with what she swore was cheeky defiance. "All right, little dude." Message received. She dug out an old field notebook, its pages yellowed but blank. 58 years old, and she'd never once tracked anything more wild than grocery prices. Still, woman laced up her sturdiest sneakers, once her daughter called grandpa shoes with a grin, and marched to community board farmer's market. Between ads for sourdough starters and ukulele lessons, a flyer stood out, Urban Birdwatching Collective. Beginners welcome. Bring curiosity, leave with purpose. First meetup was a disaster. Creator mistook a crow for a raven, earned a patient sigh from a teen in vintage binoculars. But group, a ragtag fam of retirees, baristas, and one overly enthusiastic postal worker, just laughed. Crows are punk rockers, someone said. Ravens are professors. Notebook in hand, she leaned into humility. She scribbled observations, cross-referenced with a battered field guide. Stubborn as dandelions cracking her apartment's pavement. Weeks in, she noticed patterns. Certain birds vanished near construction sites. Others thrived in alleyway gardens. Data became her compass. Each entry a quiet rebellion against helplessness. When eco-grief crept in thick as Seattle fog, she'd flip through her notes, reminders that small actions mattered. One evening she spotted a fledgling jay grounded near a busy crosswalk. Pre-meetup Martha might have walked by, assuming someone else would handle it. Now she waved down cyclists, commandeered a cardboard box, and delivered bird to a wildlife rehabber. Your third rescue this week from that collective, rehabber remarked. Martha's chest swelled. Not bad for a woman who'd once thought her best years were behind her. Her notebook grew dog-eared, filled with sketches and stray thoughts. Some pages bore coffee rings, others smudges from rain. Every stain a badge of proof. She was still here, still fighting, one stubborn observation at a time. Creator scowled her phone. Another climate disaster headline. When a flash of movement caught her eye. A sparrow, bold as brass, hopped onto her windowsill, cocking its head as if asking why she wasn't outside. That did it. She snapped phone shut, grabbed her battered field notebook and marched into drizzle. If doom scrolling wouldn't fix planet, maybe counting birds would. Seattle's farmers market buzzed with Saturday chaos, but Creator wove through crowd like a woman on a mission. She'd heard whispers about an urban birdwatching collective, mostly millennials in Patagonia vests, but figured her decades of noting robins and jays in margins of grocery lists counted for something. When she sidled up to their booth, a 20-something with a man bun gave her once-over. Cool notebook, he said, nodding her ink-smudged pages. Skepticism melted into curiosity as she flipped it open, revealing years of meticulous sketches. A Cooper's hawk mid-dive. A hummingbird's iridescent throat. Whoa, you're legit. By sundown, Creator was leading her first workshop. Forget perfect data, she told group, tapping her notebook like a preacher with a Bible. Just notice. A crow stealing a bagel? Write it down. Pigeons plotting world domination? That's science, fam. Laughter rippled through crowd. She showed them how to track urban shifts. Fewer sparrows, more invasive starlings, and something flickered in their eyes. Purpose. Then came twist. A local journalist snapping pics of market's heirloom tomatoes, caught she mid-gesture, her notebook aloft as a bald eagle soared overhead. Shot went viral. 58-year-old grandma schools Seattle on climate hope. Emails flooded in schools, podcasts, even a skeptical neighbor who'd once scoffed her bird phase. Now he stood gaping her packed community center talk, murmuring, she actually knows stuff. Martha allowed herself a tiny victory grin, scribbling in her notebook as crowd roared. This was her start. Not with rage, but with ink-stained fingers and a flock of unlikely allies. Birds had brought her back to life. Now she'd return favor. Martha, 58, scowled her phone. Another climate disaster headline. When a sparrow landed on her windowsill, cocking its head as if to say this is what's got you spiraling. She grabbed a dusty field notebook, scribbled day 1 sparrow, bossy, and stepped outside. Seattle's gray streets became her laboratory. She logged crows bickering over bagels, a heron stalking ducklings with grace of a ballet dancer who'd had one too many espressos. Soon her notebook brimmed with doodles, migration patterns, and a running tally of burb drama. Farmers market, she collared strangers. Seen any weird birds lately? Until she'd amassed a ragtag crew of retirees, baristas, and a 12-year-old with encyclopedic owl knowledge. Their urban birdwatching collective, Beak Freaks, was born. Martha's grief didn't vanish, but it grew feathers. She guided newbies in distinguishing a Cooper's hawk from just a punk pigeon, hosted pie and count nights, and laughed when her crew dubbed her Captain Birdpants. That notebook, once a relic, became a manifesto. We notice. We fight by paying attention. One damp morning she spotted a rare varied thrush, its orange stripes blazing like hope, and her crew hooped like they'd won lottery. Climate anxiety still lurked, but now it shared space with wonder, with purpose, with a fam who showed up. Binoculars ask you to say, look, right here. Life's still kicking. Grab your notebook.